Robin Fullman Otta. We are so delighted to have you as our special guest today to tell us about the singing CEO, which you are. And talking about that, we wanted to talk about your life a little bit. And from what I understand, you started singing at age 5 when you sang Silent Night in front of your parents and your relatives, and everyone was blown away.
It was a very interesting story because no one can believe that a 5-year-old back then displayed an obvious talent and skill set for singing. And I was in the back of the car. I think it was a station wagon at the time. And my parents asked all 3 of us kids to sing a song for Christmas. And my older brother Jack sang some sort of Santa Claus is coming to town. And my little brother was too young to even know how to do it. And so that left me. And the one piece I loved was Silent Night.
Yeah.
And so I sang it in the back seat. And I remember thinking to myself, I want to make this beautiful. I know how to make this beautiful. I'd listened to Barry Manilow like crazy, who's one of my idols. And I literally understood what I would have to do. And I finished singing it, and mom and dad were silent. It literally was a silent night. And they asked me to sing it again. They thought it was that good. So I sang it again, and this time I went, I need to make it better. I need to put vibrato in it, which is the spin of the voice. I need to make it clearer and not breathy. I need to sing exactly in tune. And I finished, and my parents didn't know what to say. And so I went to the family Christmas party, and that was where everybody started to understand, gee, Robin can sing. She's the next female in the family who has the
Tell
gift.
us about your grandmother.
Okay, so my great-grandmother,
Great-grandmother.
my great-grandmother on my,
Father's.
so my father's maternal grandmother, Madame Dorothea Darfus, was trained by the Bavarian nuns how to sing. She came over on the boat, met her husband, Baron Heinrich von Henningsen. They settled in Chicago. Her husband abandoned her, and she had no way to support her children. So what she ended up doing is she had already sung in Bavaria. She came over to Chicago and began to create a voice studio. She ended up having one of the biggest voice studios in Chicago, started the German opera classical station, which is still going there, and started to do recitals and operas in Chicago and the surrounding areas. So I have this unique background where in my father's family, they all really respect this skill, this natural ability, and they train it. And that's how I started with classical music right off the bat.
So by age 10, you were taking singing lessons.
Yes.
And then by age 16, I knew you in your teens. And you had this huge voice. Right. And you were singing musicals throughout Southern California.
I was.
Yeah.
And you actually have known me since I was very little, very young. In my early teens, I started with Maurice Allard, who was the head of the Californians and the Orange County Master Chorale. And he was the chorus master for Opera Pacific when it first started, when David DiChiara was the general director. And so he held auditions with Lori Burrell at the time, and who was Lori Green. And I was cast into the adult chorus, and I wasn't even 16 yet.
Wow.
You were in the adult chorus. I had known you because you also took lessons from Maurice. And it was interesting. I just always knew you as Donna. One of my fellow friends and students of this man we loved and adored.
Yeah, we did.
And Kiki took lessons from him, Kiki Reinerson.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people in Orange County who loved him.
So then you went on, as from what I understand, and you got a associate arts degree from Saddleback College in business.
That's where I met my husband, David.
Then you were 20 years old. Then you decided to go to Japan for a year.
And I went to Sanrio Land, Puroland, which is like Disneyland.
And starred in a musical.
I did. And I actually, even back then, my Orange County family and community supported me. Kiki's father came over, her family came over, they saw me sing. Bill Brawley from the Young Americans, he came over and saw me. it was a really neat experience to live in Tokyo at 20 years old
Yeah.
and be the star of a musical, which I thought was, I'm doing a Broadway show, I'm going to be the star, I'm Princess Luna of the Moon. What young diva doesn't want this? And then I got there and it was basically Hello Kitty Land. It was a amusement park and I was doing glorified dinner theater. 4 shows a day. There was
Really?
no union. And I had to do these shows over and over and over. I eventually realized that this was not for me.
Yeah.
I was the only one who didn't get sick, developed vocal problems. And so I came home.
Then you enrolled at Indiana University, where you got a bachelor's in
Go
psychology.
Hoosiers.
Go Hoosiers. We're
This
both
is our
Hoosiers.
Hoosier group.
And she got a bachelor's in psychology.
No, this one yes, you're right. Bachelor's in psychology.
And then you were very involved with the opera program at Indiana University, which is renowned.
Yes.
And so then the Indianapolis Opera, you interviewed with them, and they cast you in The Merry Widow.
I don't know how you remember all
And
this, Donna.
you did
You're
all
amazing.
kind. Well, I read your bio.
Yeah, but still, this is details. These are the details that no one
and
remembers.
you starred in many of their operas while you were there for 4 years. Then you came back.
Yes.
And then you said that being at IU was a decision maker for your career.
Mm-hmm.
Your operatic career started there. And for 30 years, you traveled the world, sang in all the opera houses. You did opera, you did oratorios, you did recitals in the opera houses of the world and recital halls. And were married along the way,
Mm-hmm.
happily still, and had 2 children. And you did that for 30 years. Now, in between, from what I understand, also, well, from 2000, I thought it was interesting, from 2000 to 2009, you were the artistic director at the Orange County School of the Arts and in charge of their voice conservancy, right?
Yeah, it
Conservatory
started with Ralph Opasek. For those of you who know him, is a genius. He's
Yeah.
a complete visionary. So I had the opportunity to work with him and Steve Wagner, who was the CFO of the school. And so I started to really delve into the business aspects of running a larger organization. And they were so smart. They knew I was not your standard business person who would fit into a cookie cutter type academic institution. They basically opened the doors and said, go do what you got to do. They let me raise the funds. They let me develop a program, and it was an opera program, which was very unique in North America. There were maybe 3 high school, junior high programs.
Yeah.
And from there, we developed a choral program. Now they've combined the two, and it's a voice institute, a voice conservatory run by very capable people. And I was there for quite some time until my career was so busy that I no longer became an asset to the students when I was gone so much.
Yeah.
I knew it. My assistant, who had been with Opera Pacific, Andrew Nienaber, we had discussed this in detail. And at a certain point, you have to know when to step aside and let the next evolution happen. And that's pretty much what I told Ralph. I had to leave to go sing.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And they were so good to me. I was able to travel and sing and perform and come back. And we made it work. But at a certain point, I was gone all the time.
Well, then about 30 years of that. And then your father says to you,
Yes.
I'd really like for you to join the company. And her father had founded and was head of RA Industries.
Correct.
Which was a manufacturing engineering company
Mm-hmm.
that worked with aerospace and
oil, gas, nuclear. It was an incredible machine shop that created the most complicated, what we call turnkey assemblies, complicated parts that all work together and are put into a bigger tool.
And then so you went back to Chapman University and got your MBA.
Yes,
to help you do this because you became president CEO.
And I needed help. I knew,
yeah.
Once again, any good leader knows when they are needing more education, more knowledge, more experience. And I remember sitting with Lynn Doty at an event. We were up in LA watching Placido Domingo sing, and instead of me watching Placido sing, I'm talking to Lynn intensely about the business school. And she said, I think we have a program there that you might want to apply for. I never heard of this executive MBA program. I went and met the next day or 2 days later with the head of the program, Debbie Gonda, and she ran me through my paces. I had to do a very intense application process that had to be approved by the entire business board. They approve every person that goes into the executive program. And I fortunately made it in.
So you graduated from that, and
Yes.
now you're on the Ardrich School of Business Board of Counselors
I am.
and on the Board of Governors at Chapman as well.
It's a privilege every day.
And then you ran your company, and and she's also a member of Women of Chapman.
I love Chapman.
By the way,
Very devoted to Chapman. The whole process. It's a family. It's a visionary organization, and I've seen what goes on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So I know the quality of the human beings that are running the institution. And coming from an education background, I really respect it, and I love being a part of it.
I thought it was interesting that you've received some awards. I know the OC Arts gave you the Artist of the Year award in 2009.
Right.
And I thought it was really interesting the Board of Education in Orange County gave you Educator of the Year.
Right.
I mean, that says a lot. And that happened probably when you were with the School of the Arts.
I
right?
was.
Because you expanded it to include Orange County education.
I did. I am, the biggest things in my life happen to be arts, education, and children. And special needs. Those are the things I focused my entire...
Well, you created the Robin Young Foundation, which
Yes.
gives scholarships and grants and special awards to young artists as well as special needs artists, right?
Correct. Fulman Young Foundation for the Arts.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Young, one of my producers, more than that, he was my dearest friend, and he went with me everywhere to see me sing. He was passionate about opera.
Oh, how wonderful.
And he was in his 70s, and he would get on a plane and fly to see me sing Tosca in Milwaukee, and with his family who were from that area, Dick and Marilyn Vitek. And he really was one of my best friends, and we would meet weekly for pie at Hoff's Hut, and he would scholarship half the students who would sing with me because he wanted to support young tenors, and he would come and sit in on their lessons and go to every recital. It was a true impresario.
Yeah, he was.
Right.
Well, you also established another foundation. I forgot to mention that Robin was also president CEO of Marcall.
Yes, Marcall.
Marcall LLC, which is the advertising marketing business that runs RA Industries, correct?
Yes, those businesses are now closed. My father passed away a year and a half ago, and since then these companies, which had been in existence for about 50 years, have now been liquidated.
Mm-hmm.
And when he left, that spirit died with him.
Yeah, it sounds like
Not within me. I mean, my father was one of my dearest best friends. For those who have met him, he looked just like that actor Donald Sutherland.
It did.
He took great pride in it. Actually, the OCBJ put a picture of him in there next to Donald Sutherland and said, "Can we tell these two apart?" My dad had that cut out and put on his office wall, so he was pretty
That's special.
he thought he was great. Hot stuff. He was a good man. Very good man.
Well, I know that then you did also, your father bought a fishing lodge in Alaska.
Yes.
I know, and he asked you to help him run it.
Yes.
You did that for about 9 years.
He told me he bought a fishing lodge, and I thought, wow, this is great. I'm thinking hot toddies, little blankets, read a book. No, not at all. It was a full business. It had 20-some buildings, 30-some jet boats, and guests who would come, and at times it would have well over 100 guests. And so this was not my vision. This was suddenly I had another business to run with alongside one of his very dear friends, and it was a lot of work to get that thing up and running.
It was.
But it was fabulous, and I love fly fishing. That's one of my secrets, is I'm a great fly fisher woman. My dad taught me. So I have a good cast.
So then you founded the lodge called,
Oh, yes.
how do you say it? Come on.
Katmai.
Katmai Lodge in Alaska, along with Marcall Foundation for Disease and disability awareness.
We founded that to help underwrite a woman, Cindy Abbott, who was the first woman. She was legally blind and I believe climbed Mount Everest.
Wow.
And went into the Iditarod, the greatest race.
In Alaska,
and
yeah.
we helped sponsor her. And so we founded this lodge to help others along the way. And it was so great because my dad was able to go on what's called, I think it's called the whip sled, or in the opening ceremonies, he was in the sled that was being pulled by the dogs in Alaska.
Yeah.
And they hooked up a little tiny sled for me in the back. And I'm like this in every picture.
That's cute.
It was a lot of fun, and he was just thrilled to have that experience. But yes, we have been dedicated to helping those who are less fortunate and those who can't help themselves. That's our job as we go through life. It's our job to help those and stand up for those who cannot advocate or do not have a voice. And that's why I do what I do.
Well, now Robin's going to share with us some of the wonderful things that she experienced during her travels around the world as an opera diva. And if you want to talk a little bit more about your business career too, that's fine with us, but that's why we're here. The singing diva will now take over.
Hi, everybody. I am Robin Fullman-Otta, as our lovely hostess for the afternoon, Ms. Donna Bunce, has already introduced me as. I'm thrilled to be here talking to my Chapman family. I'm a devotee of everything Chapman. I'm dedicated to our educational platforms, the people who run the school, the people who are on our boards, the students who attend. Everything about Chapman and our little city and county that we're from inspires me every day to keep being involved with Chapman University. And so I thank you, and here's to you for remaining dedicated to the women of Chapman. It's been going for, I think this is the 50th year. So it's been going much, much longer than my age, like decades. And it's a great fortunate opportunity that I am now a member, thanks to my lovely Miss Donna Bunce, who is here in my music room, sitting on my couch. We thought it would be very fun to give you an idea of what it's like to be a diva. And most people say diva nowadays, and they refer to people like Aretha Franklin. They refer to the Kardashian ladies. All of those ladies are lovely. But that's really not what a diva is. A diva is someone who has dedicated her life to her operatic craft, studied it, committed to it, and sacrificed greatly to be that opera singer, to perform that literature at the highest level, and not just for a blink of an eye, but for a lifetime to be committed to it. It is always a privilege when people refer to me as a diva, and it is not in any way, shape, or form derogatory or sarcastic or humorous, because I worked my entire life to be a diva. And that is just a part of who I am now in my life. It's not the entire person, but it certainly is a bit of who I have been. And apparently, according to Donna and Barbara Eidson, I still am a big diva. So we're going to hold on to that, especially for today's talk. Now, in reflection of how I became a diva, it started when I was very young. I loved music. I remember I used to watch the TV show That's Entertainment, and they had multiple episodes they did, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. Well, I got a VCR and I recorded it, and I remember vividly practicing with Judy Garland singing over and over in a movie where she starred with Clark Gable. And it was where she was writing this letter to him, and she would say, "Dear Mr. Gable, I am writing this to you, and I hope that you will read it so you know. My heart begins to hammer, and I stutter and I stammer every time I see you at the picture show. I guess I'm just another fan of yours, and I thought I'd write and tell you so. Oh, but she didn't have the glass of wine. And then she would sing, "You made me love you. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it." So many of you probably remember that. And phrase by phrase, note by note, breath by breath, I tried to mimic her. And that was the beginning of my training. I was lucky to have Maurice Szilard, my voice teacher. For 18 years, I worked with Maurice, and he taught me that being a diva has to do with the D's in life. Number one thing, discipline. That when you do something, you do it right. You don't approximate, but commit completely to the effort at hand. Dedication. You have to dedicate yourself to this craft, and a lot of things fall by the wayside. I laugh about having a glass of wine, but actually it's Diet Coke. I dedicated myself. I never drank. I never did drugs. I never partied like some of my peers. My voice teacher as an adult, Diana Soviero, she used to say she lived like a nun. And that's pretty much how I lived, because I couldn't do a lot of things my friends would do. I couldn't go to rock concerts because it would affect my hearing. And God forbid I sit and scream and then have to go to a voice lesson with Maurice. Well, then there would be real screaming going on, and it would be at me. So the discipline, the dedication, and how about the desire? You have to want this above everything else in your life, that you're willing to give up things, going to the movies, going out dancing, missing your prom. All those things were a part of my life. I wasn't allowed to be a cheerleader because Maurice said no, it would ruin my voice. There were so many things that I had wanted to do that I was not allowed to do because I desired it that much. And I started singing professionally when I was 15. I was in the Master Chorale of Orange County's concert with Florence Henderson, the mom from the Brady Bunch. Do you remember her? And you were in it. You were in the Californians, Donna, right? Okay, I remember all this. And I remember Florence Henderson was tiny. Holy cow. She was skinny, very petite. I felt like a giant next to her at my massive 5'5.5". And I remember singing that Sound of Music duet. I am 16 going on 17. And I remember thinking, I've arrived. I am a star for a whole 30 seconds. That was a shift for me. That's when I started to learn through my voice teacher, Maurice Szillard's niece, lifelong member of the Women of Chapman, Marla Patterson, saw me sing, and she had had a musical theater career. And she told me later on in life that I looked at you and I realized you were a young woman who was being put in a little girl's outfit, singing a little girl repertoire, but your temperament was something of much more. And later on, Maurice connected me with her, and she actually taught me how to be a diva, how to wear my hair, how to do my makeup, what colors I should wear. She actually was able to color key me. So I'm a summer, apparently, and I still remember. And that's the diva training. So a diva, drive, discipline, dedication, desire, and you gotta have a little bit of diva. You gotta have flamboyant behavior. You have to know how to walk into a room and attract attention. I didn't know what that was back then. I just thought, bigger hair, more makeup, higher heels. As I grew in my life and became more of Robin, I learned it really was just about accepting who I was, knowing what I wanted in life, and being confident about my choices. Those things make people want to be around you. They want to be your friend, and in turn, you want to be their friend. I learned how to use my voice in a different way than just singing, but speaking and speaking about the important things in life. Speaking as a teacher, talking to young women. I've taught for well over 30 years. Maurice taught me the craft. And every young girl I work with and boy, it's always about teaching them how to embrace who they are and using their voice so that they can be heard, whether through singing, public speaking, whether it's through political positions. I've worked with so many different types of artists in my life, and it's been a joy to teach people how to be heard. I move on because those times in my life were very pivotal in who I later have become. That first concert, which led into me singing in the adult chorus with Donna of La Boheme. And I listened over and over to two women in the opera, Catherine Luna and Karen Hofstedt. Karen was Musetta, the coquette. And then you had Mimi, who was the ill seamstress. And she embroidered silk flowers on gowns. And both of those ladies later embodied who I was at different times in my life. And I just vividly remember studying Si mi chiamano Mimi over and over and over, and how I knew at that age that someday I was going to sing that role. And I kept listening to a recording of Victoria de Los Angeles on my Walkman, the old cassette Walkman, and I would stop and start it because she would get to this part. Ma quando vien lo gelo, il primo sole mio. Okay, it's getting too high. I'm going to stop there. But I remember listening to her thinking that is the most luxurious music. I'd never heard anything quite like Puccini's musical and orchestral line. I'd never heard anything like that. And suddenly it's being presented to me in real life. And the sound just enveloped me and became a part of me. And it was like bathing in honey. That's what Puccini was to me. And it just filtered through me. So fast forward to my time at Indiana University. Donna shared with you I went to Japan, and I lived there a period of time, and I did this musical, and it was a lovely experience. And actually, that's where the Reinersons came and visited me, and my parents came, and my grandparents came. It was an incredible experience for a young woman to not just move out of her parents' house at 20, but to move to another country where I didn't speak the language. I had no idea what I was doing. And I learned what discipline was. Doing 4 shows a day in and day out, 5 days a week. Originally it was 6 days a week, but then we made them uphold our contracts. It was crazy. And I never lost my voice. I never had a problem with stamina. I knew how to keep going. And I remember tripping in the performance and dislocating both knees at the same time. That was the beginning of my professional joint problems that singers incur over decades. And I got myself out of the flowing river on stage, waist deep, and continued to do the show. I popped my knees back in and limped through the rest of it, sopping wet with my wand, hoping to God it would be over. And they didn't have anybody to replace me after that show, and there was another one 20 minutes later. I went on and did the next one. And I remember my Japanese colleagues kept saying to me, "Hey, combate ne. You are a strong woman. Be strong with this. I respect your sacrifice for the team and the strength that you have. Be strong." I didn't know any different. The show must go on. There's no stop and hit rewind. It's live theater. Boy, did that pay off later in life. I just didn't know that resiliency would be such a part of me. So Fast forward again. After Japan, I went to Indiana University. They held my position open. And I was very lucky. That's where Maurice Allard had gone to school, and he had explained it to me. And it turned out I didn't know anything about opera. It was the number one opera school in the world at that time. Nobody does as many performances other than the Metropolitan Opera, if you can believe that. And they had this beautiful theater called the Mac. I went there and tried all these voice teachers out in my first couple weeks of school. Now, mind you, I had come from the best of the best teachers. Maurice was superior, and I credit my mother, Carol Fullman, for connecting me with him. He was a genius, and I was one of the youngest people he ever taught. I was lucky, and he told me all about IU. So I built these dreams of what the Midwest was and Indiana and all this and that. And I went there, and I fell in love with who I became there. And I fell in love with the leaves changing. And I fell in love with finding my authentic self that I was as a child. Just a normal girl who likes to dance and sing and wear tiaras. IU was magical. I tried all these different teachers who shall remain nameless. I went to the head of the music department, Dr. Havronik, and I explained to him that I was not comfortable with any of these teachers that he had sent me to. And, you know, I knew everything at 20. I thought, oh yeah, I'm super smart. Or 21 at that time. And he finally told me about this woman who had had breast cancer and had to stop teaching for a while. And her name was Professor Lynn Luciano. And normally her studio was packed. And he thought she was a pretty good teacher. Virginia Zayani, who is a living legend, had been her teacher in Italy. And Ms. Zayani brought her over to Indiana. I said, all right, I'll try her. I don't care if she has cancer or not. If she's great, good. That was September. 2 months later, I did an audition for Indianapolis Opera. So basically, I had 8 lessons with her. I did an audition for Jim Caraher, who was the general director at the time, and my coach, Shuichi Umayama, who went up there with me. And I sang, I'm trying to remember, He Touched Me from Drat the Cat. He touched me. Okay, beautiful piece. And then I sang Stranger in Paradise because they were doing Kismet and they had lost their Marsina. And I had done Marsina up in Downey at the Civic Light Opera a few years earlier. I sang that. I sang He Touched Me. And I want to say I sang something else. But I didn't have to sing my aria. I hadn't had it completely memorized that I had learned in the last 8 weeks. And it was called Signore Ascolta. And I was so stressed out and sweating it that they were going to ask me to sing this aria I knew I couldn't sing and I was struggling with. They didn't ask. I left. My coach called me and said, "You're never going to believe this." And I said, "What?" He said, "They're going to hire you for The Merry Widow." The Merry Widow's second leading lady was Valenciennes. That is the role I did here for Opera Pacific. It was my first role. And coming in for my close-up, not too close because of my wrinkles. You see me as a can-can girl? I did flips across the stage. It started my operatic solo career. And I can't believe I got cast by David D. Chiara and Mitchell Serker here in my hometown. I went away, I did all this musical theater, and then I come back here, and look what happens. I get hired at Indianapolis Opera. I get hired here at Opera Pacific to sing this role in The Merry Widow. And John DeMaine, who was Madison Opera, I went to audition for him, and he turned to me and had his assistant, after I was finished singing, chase me into the parking structure in Madison, Wisconsin, bring me back in, and he said, "Wait a second. Have you ever sung The Widow?" And I thought, huh? Who is that? What is he talking about? No, Hannah from The Merry Widow. The Merry Widow. That's when it all clicked. This is when I learned to be a diva. So here I've started as a child singing with Donna. I rotate into the chorus at La Boheme. I'm in awe of these singers and Mimi in La Boheme. I go to Indiana years later and I audition for a musical, and what am I cast in? The Merry Widow. I do that secondary leading lady role, which propelled me into Opera Pacific's Merry Widow, which propelled me into doing an audition in Milwaukee for Musetta in La Boheme. And they sent me to Madison, where I sing for John DeMaine, who hires me ultimately. He chases me out into the parking lot to come back in and sing Villa, which Maurice had taught me. So this is all going on while I'm at Indianapolis Opera and I'm studying with Ms. Luciano. This all happened in from the time I was cast as in The Merry Widow into receiving the lead in Merry Widow happened in 1 year. That doesn't happen. I can't believe how fortunate I was. We were talking about the different experiences I had, and one of the most pivotal one was when I became the Merry Widow. It's when I learned to be a diva, and it was directly related to Hello Dolly and Barbra Streisand's entrance when she shows up to the Harmonia Gardens and to meet Horace Vandergill, I think is his last name. And this, which normally has a 12-foot train and big feathers for my hair and white gloves and this fabulous feather fan, I called my gay husband in New York, Joe Bichetta, and said, Joe, the director's not directing me and I don't know what to do. And I'm freaking out. Help me. And so in my hotel room in Madison, Wisconsin, I stood there and practiced with sheet music, and he staged me in my hotel room. So the next day I show up to the rehearsal and I do it all, and they don't even stop me once. The director's like, perfect, that's fabulous. And so the concept of fake it till you make it was solidified there. That is how I learned how to move on stage, to stand on stage. I learned from Marla Patterson how to be that diva I told you about. This character became one of my signature roles. And Hannah Glavari is a beautiful character because she started as someone who had nothing, ultimately met a man who loved her and cared for her, an older man who worshipped her, but really helped build her confidence in who she was. And when she becomes the Merry Widow after he dies, she becomes this very wealthy woman that everybody wants to be a part of. However, she's still that simple woman that her deceased husband married. And when she finally meets her love interest, Danilo, who she dated as a child, now she's in a different position because he's of noble birth. Count Danilo Danilovich. They end up rekindling their love during this and becoming committed to each other. Of course, it's a soap opera and it's Franz Lehar, so it happens pretty quick. But what makes her so beautiful is she still is the woman she had always been, humble, loving, understanding that everybody's human and she could forgive this man who broke her heart and open herself up to love again. This is how I made every character believable. I'm known as what's called a singing actress, or an actress who sings. I feel everything that character feels, and I had to learn how to amplify it so that it would carry over an orchestra pit into the audience. I learned how to be bigger than life, just as easily as I can just be myself and natural. This is very important in these kind of roles, is how to expand on an emotion that an audience person can receive and feel it. That's why we all go to the theater. We want to feel what those people are feeling on stage. And how do I, as an artist, do that? By amping it up. I have to be so open and so much a channel for the composer's intention, musical intention, the librettist's word intention, and the character itself, which could go back to an original novel. So that is Hannah. And I always have pulled on the person I grew up being, which was not a diva, a tomboy, who just loved to live, played, and loved to just sing. And then how to remain open to that person as an adult and not lose that affinity and joy and innocence when it comes to my craft. There's always another something to discover. So moving on from this character to this character, this is my actual costume from Opera Pacific's La Boheme. They made my costumes for me, and they gave them to me when Opera Pacific closed. So Mimi, I became one of my other signature roles. This character, I was so deeply passionate about. When I went to audition for New York City Opera, they asked me to do this character of Mimi because I had sung it in various cities. I couldn't come back for a callback because I was in Washington, D.C. singing The Crucible. And so instead, on the phone, they said, if she can't come back for a callback, then we're going to offer her Musetta. It's a safe debut role at New York City Opera. Of course, I said yes. And it became a dream. When I went to New York and sang it, I couldn't believe it. I had no stage rehearsal time. I came late is the problem. I was in Washington singing at the Kennedy Center. And so I came late, which everybody hates. But they threw me in and I figured it out. It was no big deal. And then he said I dove in. And I remember standing in the wings just before then, crying. Because when Maurice died, Donna's going to cry. I know you're going to cry. I wrote him a letter of love, my voice teacher. And I listed down all the goals he and I had. And one of them was for me to make a debut in New York because he had never done it himself. And I sealed it with a red rose from his casket and put it in my hope chest. And I did not read it. And I said I would read this when I was 30. And here's the goals that I set for us. And so backstage at City Opera by myself in the wings, it's straight out of a movie or Glee, you know, I just prayed to Maurice and talked to him. And I said, well, we finally made it. We did it, Maurice. And that was it. I dipped my toes in the water and then took over. Had a blast. And after that, they offered me many roles. But it was a dream. It's the dream everybody wishes for. And I had it. And it because of Boheme and how I started with Opera Pacific. And I go on to my next characters. And I will have two leading ladies in this room with me in about 10 seconds. Well, stand by. Standing next to me is the beautiful former past president of Women of Chapman, Miss Barbara Eidson, a real diva with a really fabulous heart. I feel like Oprah Winfrey. I'm kind of enjoying this.
So much.
Now, normally I would introduce her as the character of the gown she's wearing, which in this case is Floria Tosca. Many of you may have heard of the opera Tosca. Well, this is the character of that role. This is what I wore when I sang Floria Tosca. Mm-hmm. And it's the dream of every young soprano. No matter what your voice type is, you always want to be Tosca because she is the epitome of a diva. And the temperament and the music. It's Giacomo Puccini, so it's in the Romantic era of music. So many people have heard this literature. And when she's wearing this aria, excuse me, you can tell I'm obsessed about the aria. When she's wearing this gown, it's in Act 2, and she is fighting for the life of her lover, Cavaradossi, the artist, the painter. He had been painting a mural in the church. And she is forced to engage with Scarpia, the bad guy in the opera. Scarpia has the ability to set Cavaradossi free from any future law enforcement. He can let him go, let Tosca go. But what do you think Scarpia wants from the beautiful singer Tosca in order to get her lover released? What do you think he would go after if she's such a stunning, passionate, vivacious, dramatic person?
He would want her hand in marriage.
Oh no. He just wants sex. Okay?
Oh.
He just wants her. And that's very nice, Barbara. Very genteel of heart. I love that thought. But this is a much more romantic, fiery opera. And in Act 2, he hits her, throws her to the ground. And so she's in this gown. And she's fighting for her life. Not just hers, but her lover's, Cavaradossi, who's the tenor, who's really good looking and all of that. And she is on the floor singing the world famous aria Vici d'arte, where she says, Vici d'arte, vici d'amore. I lived for art. I live for love. I've dedicated myself to the Madonna and God. And this is how I'm paid back. By having to basically sell myself to this man in order for us to be set free. So now I want you to picture wearing this gown on the floor, face down, with your arms pushing up and singing. How easy do you think that might feel?
Not.
Why?
Because I can't sing.
I'm sure you can sing in there.
Just the weight of the costume,
Right.
just trying to get all of the vocal cords to work. I mean,
It's
you're
difficult
not getting air. Yes.
because this top part of the
It's very-
bodice,
yes.
what does that feel like?
It's like a corset.
Yes.
It's constrained. Yeah.
So when we opera singers wear our costumes on stage, most of the time we are corseted in the traditional undergarments of that time period in order to make our gowns and costumes look correct. And in this particular gown, which they made for me, there's other parts to it. There's a cape and there's all this other stuff, and of course a tiara, which I can't find my tiaras today, which is why she's not wearing it. But that's what she has to sing wearing this. And he attempts to rape her. And so she's in this gown with this big old bulky baritone, and he's going, rah, 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 singing in her ear. And she's sitting there trying to breathe. And he throws her to the gown, and she goes, and you're dying. Your cleavage is falling out into the orchestra pit. You can't breathe. You need something to drink. And you get up off the ground and he's shaking you and you're going, and she's being so, sorry, that was really loud, wasn't it? And she's singing really dramatically and you're dying. And you're into the character. And you're doing the best you can. And that's what Tosca is. Tosca's fighting for everything. For love, for passion, for her life, her lover's life. Doing it while looking great, as a true diva should. And so this, as you turn to the camera, is Tosca.
Miss Floria Tosca. Thank you. Welcome back, Miss Lovely Donna Buns. She is currently showing the latest fashion and concert wear from downtown Santa Ana. If you can believe it, this is from the quinceañera shops.
Really?
I ordered a bunch of concert gowns. I don't remember, maybe 8 years ago. And I went in and I took all my favorite colors and my favorite fabrics, and the ladies helped me design about 6 gowns. I had no idea at the time what I would use this for. And I ended up using this for a last minute phone call to replace Denise Graves, the world famous mezzo soprano who does Carmen. She had been on tour with Andrea Bocelli, A Royal Christmas with the Royal Philharmonic from the UK. The producers had contacted one of the venues in Fresno. And earlier I talked about my gay husband, Joe Bichetta. Well, Joe recommended me, and they ended up hiring me. So the producing team for Andrea received a copy of my CD, I guess, listened to it, forwarded it to Andrea in Italy. Andrea listened to it and said, hey, she's got really good technique. She can sing. They hired me to do the remainder of the tour. So, of course, the first most important thing is not what am I going to sing. It's more what am I going to wear, and how am I going to speak Italian, because my Italian is so bad and broken. I was frightened. I joined Berlitz language school so that I could speak to him. And 2, I just started shopping, going to the stores, pulling things out. Neiman's, that was a fortune. Saks, all that, right? Found nothing. And then I went for a fitting at my quinceañera store.
Yes.
And had forgotten I had ordered this. I never wore it until then. And it was the best, most magical moment, because I walked out of the dressing rooms with my hair done up and my jewels on loan from traditional jewelers. And they took one look at me, the producers, and went, wow, where did you get that? And I said, oh, it's just something I had around. You know.
In the closet.
And it was just hanging in the closet. You know, I got a few like this. And I wore this with the biggest, poofiest skirt, like the quinceañera gowns. And I had to walk next to Andrea, who is not 100% blind. He can see somewhat peripherally.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, he's going to hold your arm like this. Wait, how does he do it? He'll do this. Or he'll walk you out like a gentleman. He's Italian, right? So what's the first thing I do? I switch with him because I'm type A and a control freak to drag him out. And he's like, no. He fights me all the way on stage.
Oh no.
And we finally get out there and we start our I can't remember what we sang, but the whole gig in this gown, twofold. It taught me I could do anything in this world. There's nothing in this world I can't do except maybe brain surgery. Because they didn't tell me what I was going to sing until the day of the concert.
What?
I had come down with pneumonia. I was sick as a dog.
Oh,
I was on steroids that my doctor called in. I flew into Arizona. There was no way in heck I wasn't going to sing. This opportunity would never come again. You either take it or you don't. I ordered a bunch of orchestral parts and arrangements from a catalog called Lux Music. They sent tons and tons of arrangements with orchestra parts. I didn't know what any of them sounded like. And I sat in my hotel room trying to learn them all. And I finally had coffee with the conductor. It was 12:30. I had to be at the orchestra call at 4. I was so deeply panicked.
And that's when he told you what you were singing?
That's when he told me what I was singing.
Oh my gosh.
And so he selected everything. It was a Christmas event. I ended up singing, I know I sang O Holy Night because that was the best. And I sang some duet with Andrea, I don't remember what it is, to save my life. And I learned these songs with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra accompanying me. That's basically how I heard it for the first time. Hello, that's the
Oh my
Royal
gosh.
Phil.
That does,
That's
I mean,
huge. That's huge.
that doesn't happen. And I just remember I was dumbfounded. I couldn't believe it. And I went out an hour and a half later and did the concert. I finished that. I made it through. My husband had just flown in. I had no voice, and I just sat there and went, oh, dear God, did this just happen? And then we get on a plane and we go to the next city. And I had the moment of a lifetime. It was synthesis. So I've had all these synthesis moments happen to me in my career. And I'm singing now. And yes, Andrea's there, but it was really about me in my gown singing for all these people. And just, I still can't get over it. And I finished the whole night. It was a dream come true. I had family there. Everybody was there. My closest friends were there. They drove up from Orange
And
County.
your voice held. You
And
were
my
able to
voice
sing.
held, even though I was on medication.
That's amazing.
It was God.
Yeah.
You know, at a certain point, you turn it over to God, and God takes over. And I remember being on the way home in the car. I had zero voice by now. I lost everything. And I called my manager and Bernard, and I told him blow by blow everything that had happened. And I was crying, and I said, I wish every singer in the world could have a moment like this, because this is what we dream about. And I had it. And I remember telling him, if this is it, it's been enough.
That's nice.
I've had it all. Okay, so that's it. So
Okay.
this is Donna in my Bocelli gown where I was queen for a day.
You
And I will
certainly
come
were.
back briefly for my butterfly moment. Stand by. Ms. Reinerson, Kiki,
Hello.
thank you for joining us. This was nice of you to help put this little event together with Madam Bunce.
It was my pleasure.
So Kiki's really fun because we both had the same voice teacher, Dr. Maurice Allard, and she was an Allard kid when she was a child in the little performing arts group.
Okay.
And so Kiki's father was the one who visited me when I was in Japan, and it's full circle day today.
Absolutely.
I love it. And so, of course, Kiki is producing today, and we drug her from behind the camera to in front of the camera.
Yep.
And now she is Madam Butterfly, which I thought was perfectly appropriate because when I sang in Japan, your dad visited me.
Yep.
And ultimately you went back there.
We were there. Yep. You had just left.
See? So she has to wear my butterfly kimono. And this is so striking. It's a wedding kimono, is my understanding. And when I did Chocho-san, I was butterfly. She is one of the most in-depth, intuitive, internal characters I've ever had the privilege of working with. She is, for those of you who don't know, the musical Miss Saigon is a similar storyline to Madame Butterfly. She basically meets an American soldier who is over there at war, falls in love with him in an arranged marriage situation, which in her heart is true. It's real. She's committed for life. And this is her wedding kimono. Through the story, they're together a very brief time, and he goes back to America. He does not take her, and instead he says, wait for me. And as the seasons change, I will come back to you after the spring, I think it is, or in the spring. And she believes it. And there were a lot of people in real life, in history, that this happened to. And she has a child who is this little blonde, blue-eyed baby, Sorrow. And sadly, at the end of the opera, for those of you who don't know it, she kills herself after she has relinquished her son to his father and the father's new wife, Kate Pinkerton, in order to give him a better life. And so what I love about this character, and that speaks to me and why you're the last in our parade of costumes, is how I transitioned with all these characters personally from the innocence of some into
the strong and resilient and demanding characters of others to ultimately the most multifaceted of my characters, which is Chocho-san, who is dedicated to her spouse and her promises and her family, and especially her children, to the point she will sacrifice everything for her children. So here we are with her, our beautiful Chocho-san, who sings the aria Un Bel Di, and she just has been waiting. And if you turn positions like this is how Chocho-san stands as she waits every day and looks out into the harbor to see if an American ship has returned with her husband. Every day, when she hears the cannons roar, she runs to this position and looks. And she just sings, and she just stands there and sings and waits every day for this man. That innocence, that thing that makes women so special, being so committed and so passionate about the choices they make. That's who Chocho-san is. And the stillness of her heart, the stillness of who she is, to know this is what her path is. It's a woman who uses her voice in a different way. A woman who's technically not supposed to be heard, but only seen and admired as a geisha. So here we are now in this time frame of life in 2021, and I've dedicated my life to teaching women and young ladies how to be heard. It's been my theme through my whole life, working with special needs kids, autism spectrum, people who suffer from PTSD, Parkinson's, cancer recovery. It's all about how to be heard. And moving into this year, I will keep going further in that direction, because no longer are we to be seen and not heard. And I love that what you do for a living, this woman with so much power, but is authentic to who she really is.
Oh, thank you.
You don't need the pretense.
No.
And neither do I anymore. Now I'm just that young, well, not so young now, but I was young at once, and I'm the same girl I was when I was 10. I know who I am, I know what I want, and I know what I need to do for inner peace and happiness and joy. And that's to choose it every day and to prioritize it, and prioritize what's important to me and my faith in God, my children, and being here, a wife to my husband who I've been with well over 30 years, and be the best person I can be, and hopefully make a difference in other people's lives, and be of use to the next generation. That's what I hope for now. So as a diva, you can see it's not quite what maybe people thought. There's a lot of really exciting and wonderful and neat things, and I borrowed back the tiara from Donna. And, you know, it's great to wear a tiara.
I didn't get one.
I'm sorry. Next time. And to stand in a music room where you're surrounded by beautiful memories, and to have all these lovely things surrounding me. But it's really about who you are as a human being.
Absolutely.
And, you know, as a woman of Chapman,
We love Chapman.
I come back full circle to how Chapman helped me transition from one life to another, and to develop my voice in a different way, and to become a CEO, and to become a leader in an entirely different capacity than what I once had been, which was I used my voice to sing, to be heard, and now I use my voice in a different way, and that's to advocate for our students and to advocate for the school. And it's a privilege to be with a group of women who have a shared view. We advocate and we try to help
the next generation. And that's a gift. It's a privilege. So thank you for listening. Thank you, Kiki, for producing with our lovely hostess, Donna Bunce, over here in my music room at the Moscow Opera stage.
Beautiful. It's beautiful here.
Thank you.
What a wonderful presentation, Robin. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, we're
I
so
loved
proud
it.
to have you as a Women of Chapman. Oh my gosh.
No, I'm proud to be in the group.
We do have a live Q&A, so if you have any questions, welcome.